Okay, this is the 5-minute podcast review for Friday, April 28, 2017, where I take you through 5 podcasts in around 5 minutes, and you'll find links to all 5 podcasts mentioned right on your phone. So no need to take notes, just keep on doing what you're doing and we'll get into it. First podcast is We the People Live. So the idea behind We the People Live is that it's like something of a weekly town hall meeting to discuss a current issue. For example, the latest episode deals with Trump's first 100 days, while a couple of episodes earlier discussed the United Airlines Bumpgate issue. Each episode is hosted by Josh Zepps, who has a long background in satirical sketch comedy, and many episodes are recorded in front of a live audience, hence the name We the People Live. There are usually a couple of guests on each episode who have some sort of relevance to the episode subject, but bring differing perspectives. So the episodes are more an intelligent, informed conversation or mild debate rather than an interview. But Josh Zepps, as host, deploys his satirical background to keep the conversation moving and to keep it entertaining rather than getting too deep. The podcast self-describes itself as the town hall meeting for the 21st century, which I think sort of captures it well. So give it a go, have a listen to We the People Live using the link on your screen. Next podcast is Dear Prudence. Put simply, Dear Prudence is like a modern-day take on the Agony Aunt column. Host Mallory Ortberg responds to listener letters with a mix of millennial-type attitude and practical advice. Often episodes are loosely themed around the background or skills of a studio guest invited along to help answer the questions. There's definitely a little tongue-in-cheekiness going on with the way the presenters respond to listener questions, and that's probably what gives Dear Prudence its edge and makes it an often entertaining listen. Check it out. Once again, it's called Dear Prudence, and the link is on your screen. So, third podcast for this episode is Revisionist History. This is an interesting 10-part podcast series presented by Malcolm Gladwell. Now, I've always been a little bit wary of Malcolm Gladwell and his everything you thought you knew is wrong approach, and I carried some of that wariness listening to this series. Essentially, the premise of the series is that Gladwell takes an event from history and re-examines it, drawing conclusions that are different, usually the opposite to the common perception of the event. A good example is the episode called The Lady Vanishes, where Gladwell compares the English 19th century painter Elizabeth Thompson with Australia's first female Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. So both are women who rose to the top of their respective fields, art and politics, fields typically dominated by men. But Gladwell develops the story to show that far from being turning points for women, these were in fact incidents of, quote, moral licensing, effectively events that allow the male establishment to look like they've done the right thing, but then return to the status quo. Another example is the episode called The Satire Paradox, where Gladwell makes the case that satire, the form of comedy that's protected against defamation law in most of the Western world for its ability to keep our elected leaders in check, Gladwell argues that satire has actually the opposite effect, that it actually makes its targets more powerful. In this episode, Gladwell focuses on the example of English satirist Harry Enfield and his hugely popular satirising of Margaret Thatcher. So I remember listening to this episode in August last year when it came out and having my doubts. It felt to me like Gladwell was cherry-picking his evidence to suit his story, and it felt like his theory was about to be dealt a huge blow. At the time, the US election campaign was in its final weeks. Trump was being ruthlessly satirised by just about all media on the planet, and it was clear to everyone that, far from being made more powerful from the satire, he was about to be sent to electoral oblivion. And then the election happened. Now look, there's no doubt Malcolm Gladwell is a master storyteller, and each of the 10 episodes will pull you in and give you something to think about. Episodes only run 30 to 40 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment to knock off all 10 episodes of Revisionist History, and it's well worth it. You'll find the link to Revisionist History on your screen. Okay, fourth podcast is Mad World. Now, this is a very recent podcast series that hit the scene with a blaze of publicity thanks to its star-first guest, Prince Harry. You probably heard or read excerpts of the interview by now, with Prince Harry talking in fairly personal terms about his own experiences with mental health. Mad World will play out to be a 10-part podcast series, each week talking to a different guest about mental health issues in their own lives. With 2 episodes up, a definite theme emerging is the importance of destigmatizing mental health issues by talking about mental health issues. And to me, it seems like podcasts are a great platform to help facilitate this. Firstly, podcasts are a very personal medium. You generally listen to them with earbuds in your ears, closing out other sounds, so it feels very one-on-one. And then there's just this factor where people on podcasts feel more free to drop their guard, to open up and speak more like their real selves. Is this because they think there's no one listening, or is it the fact that podcasts are often recorded in a relaxed setting rather than the technical formality of a radio studio, or is it all of the above? I'm not sure, but this clip of Prince Harry on the Mad World podcast is a good example of the kind of guard-lowering podcasts seem to be good at inducing. In this clip, he swears. It's trivial swearing, laughably trivial swearing, but in what other media have you heard a member of the British royal family using such unguarded language?
But what we're trying to do is normalise the conversation to the point of where anyone can sit down and have a coffee and just go, you know what, I've had a really shit day. Yeah. Can I just tell you about it? Because then you walk away and it's done. Rather than a week later or 20 years later, yes, what could have been something small can then sort of just grow into this beast of a snowball that you can't dislodge, or you can dislodge, but it's going to cost you a shed load of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and probably a lot of grief for you and your family and your friends.
Okay, so that's Mad World and Prince Harry using not exactly the Queen's English. Check out that episode and check out all 10 episodes of Mad World as they unfold using the link on your screen. Okay, last podcast is HardTalk. So this is the audio version of a BBC television interview series that's been running for about 20 years. And the format of HardTalk, as the name suggests, is to take what you could call a combative but intelligent approach to its interviewees, asking them the hard questions, but equally giving them the space to respond. It's not about the cheap gotcha questions designed for entertainment. It's closer to something like a courtroom cross-examination, aimed at demolishing the spin and talking points to get closer to the truth of an issue, or at least give the listener a deeper understanding of the different perspectives. Interviewees are often world leaders and other politicians, but they can also be well-known actors, musicians, heads of companies, or others in the news. So although he's not necessarily a typical HardTalk guest, I was captivated by a recent episode interviewing the last surviving prosecutor of the Nazis at the Nuremberg trials, 98-year-old Ben Ferencz. Here he is being challenged on if the lessons of the Nuremberg trials have actually achieved anything.
So today, so many years later, here you are in your 98th year, and you look around you at the world, the conflicts that have happened in recent times. What's your assessment? Have we made progress?
We have made progress. We have not learned the lesson of Nuremberg. We have made progress. I'll come back to it, but first let me emphasize the fact. I learned that war makes murderers, mass murderers, out of otherwise decent people. And it applies to all wars and all nationalities, and I've seen it in all the wars. These are not wild animals who are out for blood. These are patriots who are trying to do their duty to protect either their religion or their nationality or their economic security. These are the three major causes. We have not learned that you cannot kill an ideology with a gun. We still go at it with the same stupid approach of spending all of your assets on building weapons and more weapons to kill more people and depriving people of the things they need to eliminate the fears which they have in their life. A man who's desperate because he has no job and has no money. If the money spent on weapons could be spent on eliminating the cause of his discontent, he's not going to risk his life and go out and kill people the way they do today.
So you were very instrumental in the setting up of the International Criminal Court, which was established by the Rome Statute in 1998. Do you think that has really helped prevent crimes against humanity, war crimes? Do you think it's stopped these crimes being committed with impunity?
It has helped, but not enough. Certainly, the existence of laws prohibiting certain behavior has some deterrent effect. But we have to bear in mind that for centuries we have glorified war-making. Ever since David hit Goliath in the head with a rock, we have glorified, the parades, the marching. No politician appears without his flags flying on all sides and the bands going and marching. And I was a soldier, and they gave me all the battle stars and they gave me all the decorations and all that stuff. We've got to reverse those thousands of years of practice because the world has changed. We're not throwing rocks anymore. We're going to kill everybody from cyberspace. We can cut off the electrical grid of any city on the planet. Are you all crazy? You're standing here watching it happen. The students don't have money to pay tuition. The refugees have no homes to go to. The old people are dying because they can't afford the medical care. And you're pouring billions of dollars every day into killing machines.
That's Hard Talk, and I've included links to both the full podcast feed and also directly to that specific episode if you want to listen to the full interview with Ben Ferencz. And that's this episode of the 5 Minute Podcast Review done. See you in the next one. Thanks for listening.